Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me here. Well, I just concluded another fascinating interview with our friend and witness, David Noble Whitecrow. We went over some new information that he hasn't shared before about his access to information over the years serving as a naval artist and graphics illustrator. And we also recap some of the earlier incidents that he shared with us in other interviews. So I encourage you to go back to some of those older interviews if any of these cases are not really clear, because we went through them in great detail. But this is really quite fascinating. It's the first time that he mentioned the Navy encountering, way back in the early 60s, he says, around aircraft, these cubes within spheres, dark cubes within spheres, just like we've heard recently from the East Coast F-18 naval incidents. I think this is really fascinating. I've never heard him talk about this. We did this over the telephone. It breaks up a little bit on his side occasionally, but I think you can get the gist of it. And we'll make sure the next time that we have a stronger connection, but I think you'll be able to hear most of it just fine. So thanks for listening. Let's get to it, and we'll talk to you later. Take care. Hey, welcome back. Hey, Dave.
Yeah,
how you doing today?
Well, I'm recovering. As you know, I got out of the hospital, and I was down in Fortuna for about a month after I had my diabetic crisis, and
Happy Halloween.
Yeah. So here I am, and I hope we have a wonderful conversation that is going to be entertaining and informative out there.
Well, we all want to wish you the best in a recovery. You mentioned you had a diabetes issue, and you're out of the hospital now?
Yeah, on heavy medication, and my son Robert, God bless him, he's looking after his dad.
Mm-hmm.
A father couldn't have a better son to take care of the old man. Boy, he's something else. Yeah.
Wow, that's really great to hear. We're happy to hear that.
Well, it is that time of nearly 80 years old, a year away from 80 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I have before me a binder that says The Finch and the UFO.
Yes.
It's a catalog of all my experiences that I want to share with the audience. So if you have questions...
We do. We have questions from listeners. How would you like to do this today? Would you like to give us any sort of... Let me ask you a couple questions first, and then we'll go to listener questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so... we are still waiting today for the release of the annual Pentagon UFO report that I'm sure you've heard about, that Congress... See, we've made progress, Dave, since a couple of years ago. Congress is now asking the Pentagon for a yearly UFO report. And, I guess it hasn't been released. It's due by the end of today. I don't know if folks are hoping that it's going to reveal something new, or if it's going to be more like this New York Times article from a couple days ago, which I mentioned to you last week, Dave, where the conclusion was that a lot of UFOs are just misidentified airborne trash. Do you think that huge object that you saw go over the USS Finch in the 63 by Operation Dominique, was that airborne trash, or what was it?
Well, it's as vivid in my mind today as the event took place back in that period of time when we happened to be part of a contingency, kind of a superpower that I was unaware of. I didn't learn about it till later, many years later, that the government observed different nations, unidentified objects from spheres and orbs and things that would circle aircraft of our country and other countries, and they couldn't identify what they were. They thought they were weather elements caused by phenomena that our climate reporters or people who study weather were unaware of. It was something new. And whether it was being activated by the alignment of planets or something new, it was a whole new physics that they didn't understand.
And what decades were these?
I'm sorry?
When was this that the government thought this might be a meteorological
Well, this was back in 1962.
62. So you're saying that back then, these objects that we now call UAP in the past couple of years, since you and I started doing these interviews, Dave, the name has changed from UFOs to UAP, unidentified aerial. And you're saying even back in the early 60s, there was concern about what these objects were and investigation within your military branch within the Navy?
Yeah, and just as a footnote, back in 1957 up to 1958, when I was living in Gilroy, California, and it's been documented by the Mount Madonna Rangers, which is the Santa Cruz Mountains that parallel the coast. And Gilroy is on the east side of the Madonna. They reported these objects, and at that particular time in 1957, 56, I lived on Dunlap Avenue just outside of Gilroy. And not far from there was Moffett Field, about 60 miles further south, I think, or north. And when I stepped out of our bungalow where I lived, I looked up into the sky and I saw a black orb suspended, and it had to be about, I don't know, from my observation, I can't tell by how high it was, but it looked like a blimp that was on end, and you were looking at the front end of it. Yeah. And that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a Goodyear blimp or something, but it didn't move for hours. And I would step in and out of our bungalow home and look up in the sky and would be still there. And so that was my first experience with a UFO. And the ironic thing about it, it was only seen by a few people. It was never reported on radar. It was never reported by the police or other people. I think only a select people, which I was selected, I don't know why, until years later, that were able to look at it and see it.
Interesting. Yeah. That is a topic that's come up recently, is it only visible to certain people? And that's what you feel, is that not everyone can see these objects?
That's correct. That's correct. I think individuals were chosen, I don't know at what stage of their existence, or in their mother's, who was carrying the children, but I think they're individuals that were chosen specifically to be observers.
That is very, very interesting. We're going to get into that in a moment with some of the listener questions, but that's a very interesting observation. David, I have to ask you, you've been around for a while. You've been in the Navy since the early 60s. Do you feel that this UFO, USO, UAP topic, has this been addressed adequately by Congress so far, or do you feel like there's just a lot more to know? Do you feel we're a few percentage away into understanding this phenomena, or 10% or 50%? What's your feeling about it?
Well, as far back as the late 40s and early 50s, the Cold, then we had the Cuban crisis and all that other stuff going on.
Right.
It was a back and forth thing to find out if there was a superior weapon system that each major country might have been experimenting with. As you know, we had some supersonic snoopers that would go up and take pictures, and they would be analyzed coming back, trying to locate what we had and what they had. It was a back and forth thing. We even had during the Roswell thing, the government was experimenting with air balloons with House of Blood cameras, taking them up and then automatically dropping their film down to the ground, and it was salvaged and been processed at the analytical lab.
The Hasselblads, you're saying the same that were used on the lunar landers.
Yeah, but they had special ones that would take pictures, and then it would discharge the film.
Right.
And then it would be recovered and then taken to be analyzed.
Okay, so that gets into a question I want to ask you from our previous episode a while ago. The last one we did, I think we're at episode 10 or something, if I'm not mistaken. And something around there. So in the last interview you and I did, Dave, we had a question. We were doing a live stream, if I'm not mistaken, and the question came up about Roswell. And you said that it was a weather balloon. And a lot of the viewers were curious, a little puzzled by your response. And you and I were talking about this last week. What do you think was going on at Roswell? So you're mentioning weather balloon detection systems. Does that have something to do with it? You don't think it was just only a weather balloon, do you? I mean, I didn't get that feeling, but that's what some viewers got from your response last time. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, declassified information will come out eventually. Roswell wasn't the only location where they were sending up these balloons that they said they were trying to find out in the ionosphere if Russia was firing off nuclear weapons, and they wanted to know, the scientific impact on EMF and all the other stuff. We were sending up cameras. We were sending up EMF readers. We were doing all kinds of stuff to find out what these strange phenomena that were being reported from military and civilian aircraft that they were observing.
Right.
So it just happened that Roswell was one of a half a dozen locations that are classified today as doing the research around the world. We had England and France also sending up
the mogul balloons, right?
Yeah, it was a multiple thing, and all of that's classified. It's never been revealed.
Yeah,
what they found.
Yeah,
and at the same time, stuff was going on in the ocean.
Right.
So same USOs and underwater vehicles were navigating under our oceans silently, and there had been some reports of divers encountering them.
Right.
And so that's something else that is just coming out and being. I have a mole, and I'm not going to give the details, but I have a government mole that is giving me information, and he's an ex-commander in the Navy, and he's a civilian now. Working for the government, and he's giving me bits and pieces of information that I'm asking that he can only reveal because a lot of it's still top secret.
Dave, are you saying that you still know things that you're not revealing on these interviews because it's classified?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Because you're still not telling us a whole bunch about Roswell, so I'm just getting this feeling. I'm not trying to put you in a difficult position. I get the feeling you're not saying the whole thing. You're still not in.
That's correct, because this is we have what can I say? One of them. I'll just say one of them is a turncoat, and he's in a very classified, high security location, and been unloading information about his species and where they come from and all kinds of stuff like that. I don't have the details. I've only got bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. And what it's doing, it's overhauling the entire conception of what we think based on our physics. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's completely different out there. completely different out there. What we call the spirit world, there are layers. There are layers. And certain entities can survive only in certain layers on the whole purpose of them attempting to clone themselves or attach themselves to the different spirit levels to learn about how to take advantage of the power that they can have. So it's a battle out there. There's a battle out there. Yeah.
So you're saying that you're aware that there's some contact with extraterrestrials right now. You're saying there's a turncoat. Is that the word you used?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've received this information from someone in the intelligence agencies who you just refer to as a mole or someone like this. And you can't say much more about it, but you know for a fact that there's contact?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
But go ahead and ask the question, and I'll say I can answer it. I won't answer it.
So again, you're telling us that there's someone that you know from the Navy, maybe someone you knew back when you were in service, who's confirmed to you that our government has contact with living extraterrestrials right now?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's correct. You see, when I was in the Navy, and you probably heard this before, I was in on the conferences because back in those days they only had slide projectors and charts and graphs.
Yeah.
So my job was to provide the flip charts, and I would, be just even the stewards who catered to the officers with coffee and meals and stuff were not allowed in the conference room. I was the only one. Mm-hmm. So I had a very high classified level, ultra top secret position. Mm-hmm. And that allowed me to go ahead and use the facilities that officers had to come and go as I pleased. But there was always a snoop, and I called him a snoop. They always watched me. They always watched who I talked to and where I went, and when we'd go overseas or whatever, big Mediterranean cruises, I always had these snoops following me because they didn't know if I was going to reveal what the information that I had learned in these conference rooms about these different subjects. Mm-hmm.
So you were privy to classified information, being a naval artist, a graphics illustrator, and general media person. Is that right? I mean, you're the person that was in the room when they had these slide presentations.
Yeah, well, the odd thing about it, and I could never understand it, why they never took a cadet or Navy prep officer or somebody and made them a graphic artist or an illustrator like me, mm-hmm. So there would be a separation between the enlisted and the officers.
I get it.
But I think it had to do with the fact that I did so many favors for officers.
You said that, yeah.
Yeah, that they trusted me.
You just knew them because you were doing their sketches, right? Just personally. You were like off the clock.
They call it Comshaw. You do favors for them, and they trust you. And
Comshaw.
Yeah, Comshaw.
Oh, okay. So it's like trading. It's like a barter system within the Navy.
Yeah.
You do favors. You did their personal portraits, and they would tell you stuff. So,
well, they would reveal stuff to me that I was curious about.
You're curious about,
and that trust developed into me having going home with them and eating with their families, dinners, and going hunting or fishing or going, doing stuff with them. And they became more confident that they could trust whatever they talked about with me.
It makes sense. It makes sense. David, to the best of your ability that you can answer this question, since you've asked me for questions, when you were in these meetings with the officers, these classified meetings on the ship, did they ever talk about UFOs and USOs as something of concern, something they wanted to know more about?
They never used UFOs or USOs. They used air phenomena.
Air phenomena, okay.
No, air phenomena. Because they would have the orbs that would follow the aircraft, or they would see strange objects that they couldn't identify. Not like weather balloons. the oddity of their shapes and colors. And a couple instances, and I forget what aircraft carriers were surrounded by these probes. Mm-hmm. And a couple of them, they got close enough to observe them, and they were like spheres inside cubicles, transparent cubicles. And they would, fly around and circle the aircraft. Some were about the size of a shoebox, and others were about the same size as the aircraft itself. But they never threatened them. They never showed any threat. Mm-hmm. And the funny part of the whole thing is, every time they took pictures, photographic pictures of these objects, they never showed up on the film.
Wow.
They never showed up. Yeah.
What you call them cubicles, is this like the cubes within spheres that we've heard about on the East Coast recently?
Yeah.
It's the same thing?
Same thing, but they were dark. They were dark spheres in a translucent cubes.
Back then, so you're saying this has been going on for decades? This is not just a recent thing that we heard from Ryan Graves and the other East Coast F-18 pilots. You know this for a fact, that these cube-like probes have been around the Navy for decades? Really
Well, what my mom told me is they switch on and off in the iris of the eye of the observer to see or not to see these things. They control what we see, not in the brain, but in the eyes.
In the eyes.
Yeah.
Dave, I don't want to probe too much into who this mole is. I'm not trying to find out who it is. Is this a newer source for you, or is this someone that you've known since we've been doing these interviews for the past couple of years, or back to the 60s?
This is one that has been assigned to me. Okay. Some of us that are born have been assigned an ET tracker or guardian or whatever. And the reveals that they give are in preparation for the big reveal, and I don't know anything about that.
The big reveal.
Yeah.
Now, is this... Oh, you've talked about your ET handlers, but you said in the beginning of the interview, this is someone that's within the intelligence services, or are you saying it's a bit of both?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is this mole person, I'm just trying to understand your source a little bit, is this a human within the U.S. intelligence services, or is this an extraterrestrial source, or a kind of someone who's a mix? Yeah,
it's the ET.
ET.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certain individuals have been assigned an extraterrestrial guardian and tracker. Okay.
Why do you call them a mole then, if they've been assigned?
Because some of them become rogue.
They go rogue. What does that mean?
They some want to give more intel to humans. Mm-hmm. And so they reveal more than what they're entitled to give.
Okay.
In confidence. And so what I'm telling you is not in its entirety. Mm-hmm. It's only bits and pieces I can share.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. So who is you mentioned another person, though. You said there was someone within. Am I reading this correctly? Did you say a few minutes ago that you knew someone within naval intelligence or somewhere that was sharing information also? Is that correct, or am I missing? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. You have multiple sources.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dave, I want to ask you about something you mentioned last week when we were just talking about doing this interview, and you can just say as much as you're comfortable or not comfortable with sharing. You mentioned a classified assignment on a sub. Is that right?
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, I was assigned to a subtender in San Diego, and this was in Point Loma. And my job was to collect the data information from subs, which was their soundings. And their soundings were on a recorder. And the recorders were given to me to be locked up in a cage in a compartment that I was assigned to. And these soundings that went into the locker cage were, what's the best word? They were translated behind this cage into readable information where only certain people could go into the cage and interpret what these soundings were, whether it was a whale or whether it was a porpoise, fish, or stuff like that. And then they would declassify it or keep them classified, and then they would put them in these containers that were stamped top secret. So my job was just, I could come and go inside this cage because my responsibility was to keep it locked up.
Right.
Okay. And only enlisted personnel from first class on up to officers were allowed to go in there and decode these soundings. I guess that's a word I use, decoding. Mm-hmm. And then put out whatever reports they would
right.
So
what did you learn from these soundings? What it was? These are sound recordings with 1960s technology.
They were sound recordings. Of course, they had their it said on, but the job of these first class and above personnel that went in there was to take the soundings and put them in a medium that could be read. Mm-hmm. Okay, that could be interpreted.
Sure.
In other words, they would identify it as something they knew or something they didn't know or something they were studying.
Of course.
Yeah. And then these tapes were collected by officers that would go in there and get them and take them down to CIC, Central Intelligence, and review them or whatever they did.
Mm-hmm.
So that I had access to it.
And yeah.
Go ahead.
What did you learn? Did they tell you anything about what they were listening to? Was it just whales and Soviet subs and other?
No. That was the whole concern. See, when you're in the Navy and you have top hearing ability, you're sent to a school, a sonar school, to learn how to identify every species of fish and porpoise or whatever in the ocean. I mean, some people are gifted that way.
Yeah.
And that's what they would have, these individuals that would go in there and listen to these soundings.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so odd and peculiar. They would talk into a recorder while they were in there, describing on their headset what they believed they were listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they would leave those recordings in there and not take them with them. And that's when I'd sneak in there.
Uh-huh.
I would sneak in there.
The truth comes out. And what did they say when you listened to their recording?
Well, I would put the headset recorder on.
Yes.
Okay. And I would hear them describe what was they had a lot of at that time porpoises that were trained to go up to other vessels and attach sounding devices to the hull of the ships. Mm-hmm. And they could pick up all communication and conversation.
Wow!
I don't know if I should be telling that.
Well, it's out now. So
it's out now. Damn it!
I'm sure people wouldn't be surprised about this. I mean, we're talking about over 50 years ago. It's around the time I was born, so we're talking quite a while ago. But I'm sure I'm sure they had.
Well, it's more advanced now.
I'm sure it's more. So they would put sounding devices and listening to conversations. I'm sure that was very valuable to learn about what our adversaries were doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. And I'm going to reveal one more thing.
Yeah.
They had seagulls. They had trained seagulls to drop bugs on the British ships.
Trained seagulls?
Seagulls, yeah, they make it look like a turd, a seagull turd.
Yeah.
But actually, it was a bug in that turd.
Is that right?
And when it would dry up, it could pick up conversations anywhere on the ship where the seagulls up the turd.
Oh, jeez. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow, what a creative bunch we have in our Navy.
Oh, yeah, we have some talent out there.
I
They
bet.
were able to do.
So,
Yeah.
I guess, Dave, what everyone would probably want to know at this point is from these sound recordings. You said some of it sounded artificial. Was some of it information that could not be identified or attached to any known vessel?
Yeah, that's what they're concerned with.
I see.
That's what they were concerned with, and that incident in Guantanamo too. That brought up a lot of questions. That brought up a lot of questions.
Which incident? You mentioned a number. You're talking about the diver that went down to.
Well, the chief that I had talked to on Guantanamo.
Are you talking about what he told you or his untimely death?
Yeah, what he told me.
Yeah.
And, just kind of an overview when I met him. He was writing his book. Mm-hmm. And it was on about that time that I had witnessed this thing going down, passing the Finch. And I mean, it was so vivid in my mind. It was like 200 yards long, and it looked like a cigar shape. On the back end, it had a kind of a halo. I guess it was propulsion system. But when it went down to past the Finch, it had already caught the attention of a lot of other. And they sent the diver. They sent a special crew from, I don't know if it was, I forget now what I had mentioned, because my mind is a little slow nowadays. They had sent a salvage crew to check it out. It was huge. It was huge. And the diver almost puked in his, drowned it in his puke when he turned around and looked at it, because his back was to it when he landed on the bottom of the ocean floor. When he turned around, this thing was just awesome. It was like 2 stories, 3 stories high, and it was translucent. And the figures inside there were like giants to him. He was just a little guy in a diving suit. But he looked into it, and this thing was huge, like 2 or 3 stories. And it was transparent. He freaked out. He freaked out. So I'm revealing some stuff that I was holding back when I was telling you about this, because I wasn't quite sure if, I'm going to get a visitor or not. I mean, that's really something. I want to slip away. It didn't even make a wave. It didn't even ripple up in the ocean to make the ships that were monitoring it or something that had gone down to take soundings on it.
You broke up a little bit there. Your signal broke up a little bit. Are you using a Wi-Fi signal or just a cell signal?
It's on the phone right now.
Yeah, is it connected to your Wi-Fi network or is it just the cell?
It's just a cell phone.
Okay, yeah, it's just break. We probably can't improve it. So let's just rewind that again. This is something you shared in the very first interview we did way back. I was looking through them earlier, and you shared that information that when it went into the water, it didn't even make any waves. Is that right?
Yeah, it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't make any waves, no splash, nothing. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of ships out there, Navy ships, communication ships, salvage ships and stuff. And it didn't even make a ripple.
When it went in?
When it went in.
And this diver that you met at Guantanamo is sent down, this Master Chief is sent down to inspect it, and he has a panic attack or something like this because it's so big and it's tall. And
yeah, he was a second class one at that time. He was
second class, right?
Yeah, and they put him in a hard hat, those heavy canvas with a round cover. and sent him down with oxygen and everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he landed with his back to it. When he turned around, he freaked out. This thing was immense. It was like 2 to 3 stories high, and it was cylindrical, transparent. And the beings in there that were looking back at him, they were like giants, you know.
That's what he told you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said he was able to put his hand through the outer shell of it?
Yeah, he said he touched it, and his hand went inside. It was like, at first it felt like Jell-O, and then it was just like, you know, natural to him. Yeah.
So incredible. And then he's writing this book about it, and then he has a quote-unquote accident.
Yeah. I don't know. What were the details I gave you about his accident? He has on a skateboard or something like that.
You mentioned that there was a flaw in the shower design. It was electrified.
Go again. Say again.
That in the Navy there were a series of electrocutions in showers when people.
Oh yeah.
Is that what the story was?
Yeah. You know, they used conduits in those days for shower curtain rods, because the conduits ran from K-part housing to K-part housing. So they said, well, hey, they make good shower curtains.
Right.
But the metal rings on the shower would eat through the conduits,
and
then they hit live wires.
Jeez,
yeah. Now, whether or not that was deliberate, I don't know.
Right, I could see it being either way. It's just very unfortunate. He mentioned to you something that when the ship left the area, did it just move away underwater again without making any wake?
That's correct. That's correct. It didn't make a wave, didn't make a ripple. The subs they had sent down were not even disturbed, and they couldn't even track it on their sonar once it got up and moved away. Yeah.
What did he think it was? What was his idea of who was inside or what this was? Did he believe it was extraterrestrial?
Well, he had no idea. He didn't even have a concept of what the extraterrestrials were. So he was in a shock mode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after they cleaned him up from the puke and everything that he did all over him, got him out of that hard hat canvas suit, you know, he ended up in Pearl Harbor Hospital. He was freaked out. They had to send the CIA, the FBI, everybody down there to see what was going on with him.
They wanted him to go down again, didn't they?
Yeah.
And he wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
So this is very interesting, Dave. He didn't use the word extraterrestrial. That's the words we're using. He actually had no idea what he was looking at, right?
That's correct.
I get it. Makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, he was in total shock. You know, to this day, no one knows what they were able to get from him, or if they sent him to a sanitarium, or they got him locked away because they're trying to pick his brain. They're trying to do it. I don't know.
Dave, you and I and our viewers, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and people have really enjoyed your contributions and our discussions here, because you can read the comments on YouTube like I can. But really what I'm wondering is this ever going to make the light of day, or is it just going to be the bunch of us here talking about it, something that you've told us about consistently with the same details for years? Is this ever going to become public knowledge beyond this YouTube channel, or do you think this is just going to be a secret forever and are we ever going to be told what is going on in our skies and our oceans? I mean, this can't be the only time this sort of thing has happened.
Well, let me tell you what. There's a conflict of interest because over a period of time, other nations have put out their communication and advanced technology for snooping in the waters and stuff. And sharing information between superpowers is still very difficult because they want the edge. Superpowers want to be the first to have the first real, super UFO or USO or whatever. So they're not sharing everything together, and that's the problem we have.
Right.
It's not a unified.
Makes sense.
So that's the problem. Some of the things we've seen in the sky are back engineered ideas that they've got collectively on their own, and they're trying to be the first. They're trying to be the first. So
makes a lot of sense. You're saying just a competition between the superpowers, and this is why we don't have public information about this yet, because each country wants to be the one to get it.
Oh yeah, and when we're competing with China, France, and England, and Germany, oh come on,
right?
The dog is going to rule the planet,
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's from communication.
I think it's a very, very reasonable explanation, and that's a very good answer to the question, isn't it? Is that they're not sharing it because they don't want to share any good stuff with other countries that might give them a huge technological advantage. Huge.
Well, the thought is, and this is not given me in details, if we're to compete in the cosmos, the physics of the cosmos the true physics of the cosmos is not really known to humans until they reach certain areas of technology and knowledge and partake. And so the race is on between superpowers to get this physics, to understand the physics so that they can participate.
Of course. It's a fascinating story. I think we're all very fortunate to be in the middle of it here with you and all the other witnesses we've heard from over the decades. And we could all agree that we really haven't heard very much, and it hasn't really gotten much better recently, at least officially. I mean, so much of it now seems classified. We have these new Pentagon organizations with strange sounding names. Anomalous aerial anomaly resolution office and things like this. Just pure.
Right. It's got to be cleared. Yeah.
Yeah. Pure jargon. Trans domain cross medium anomalies. Whatever. We're not really. We are not hearing about this, and we know about this because of the hearing last May. I think it was it the House of Representatives?
Right.
And they said, we don't want to, they asked some questions like we're talking about now, vaguely about underwater UFOs. This was the question to one of the Pentagon officials. And he says, I don't want to talk about that until the closed session this afternoon, the classified session. So we're waiting for this to open up, but I think your explanation is something that they would respond to, they would agree with. They say, look, we're not sharing this with you if it's going to help our adversaries. And it seems to be the situation. So we're in a kind of like a stalemate with it until something moves. So, Dave, we have some questions from listeners. Unless you want to say anything else, I think it'd be a good time for questions, and then we can get in.
No, go ahead. Go ahead with questions.
So we have a question from Janice, and Janice wants to know, she says, I understand that ET stuff runs in families. Has your son had any contact with them or sightings? And a follow-up question, have you had any recent contact with your handlers?
Oh, okay. My son has a total different gifts, I might say. And I can't speak for him. But he's had let's just say, he's confronted a few strange things in his time since he was a youngster that I don't, ponder and question him about, because I don't want to desanitize whatever, how can I say, is innocent, because it's more original if I don't put stuff in his head, or suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So when he explains things to me, I can interpret it my way, but it's something that he will have to work on himself to decide what it is because of his innocence.
Right.
I don't go to that.
Okay. And I think you alluded to this at the beginning of our interview. Have you had any recent contact with your handlers?
Yeah, my handler says don't say too much.
Okay.
Don't give away too much, because there's physics that I could explain in a dialogue, but the humans couldn't relate to it because the physics is out there is different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it would only sound like gibberish, or it would sound like it doesn't compute,
mm-hmm.
because what they teach you in school about the cosmos, it just doesn't relate to the layers of reality. There are layers,
mm-hmm.
okay, and each layer has its own physics.
Mm-hmm.
So just by suggesting this is not what they told me, or I'm just going to use it as an example, you might be on a timeline where you might pick out a star, and the star will give you the composition of what it is. But there's other physics that will reveal more information about it that we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Because our spectrum is limited. Our physics on the spectrum is limited. And there's a whole different physics out there. And it relates to the different layers of reality out there. It's not only our reality, there are many realities out there. And the goal or the purpose of a lot of the different entities that exist is trying to communicate with the different layers of it. So, I mean, that's the best way I could describe it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, like, we try to identify with a spirit world. Well, there are so many layers or levels of spirit worlds out there. Okay, there's not just one. But we're created in a way that we were only identified with a certain spiritual awareness after we leave this life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way we've been created. Our Creator. And it served His greater good, whatever. However you want to look at that, that's how I look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Next question. Someone wanted to know, when you became aware that the Navy was interested in UFOs, was it one incident in particular? Was it the Finch incident, or was there anything prior to that kind of cued you in a little bit that there was some interest in these aerial phenomena? When did it start? Was it a gradual awareness on your part, or was there just one event like the Finch sighting that you had?
Well, I could go back to 57 and 58 when I was in high school and I saw my first UFO. I think because that was near Moffett Field. That's a big naval air station there.
Right.
I think this has been going on for some time. I came across a big book where some rangers in Mount Madonna have been watching these things for a long time and reporting them. And, that goes along with some of the so-called gossip that was going around there.
I get it.
About the president back then.
Gossip.
And Eisenhower.
What was that?
Yeah. Well, the president at that period of time was Kennedy.
Yes.
Yeah. He lived up at Mount Madonna. He had a resort up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an encounter with the ETs that were, trying to, I guess, establish a location where they could hang out, because it was the Santa Cruz Mountains facing the northern coast of California, and then, of course, on the other end, south and east, the Santa Cruz Mountains. So they would have a good observation post, and you know he encountered them. That's speculation, but he learned too much, and that's the reason why he was taken.
He learned too much. You're saying your call broke up a little bit there. He learned too much. You're talking about the incident where he met ETs at one of the Air Force bases. Is that right?
Well, coming and going on those mountains, there's only one way to travel.
Oh, it's in the mountains. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the coastal mountains that separate the southern, coastal Santa Cruz Mountains from Gilroy and Pacheco Pass that leads you into the arid areas. But if I sound a little confused, it's because I'm trying to get visuals of what you might experience if you were on Santa Cruz Mountains, going on, looking toward the north, or looking toward the east, looking toward the west. Mm-hmm. And he would encounter ETs that would transform into humans that appear to be hikers. Or they would do this. What do you call it? Transformation. Mm-hmm. Just not disturb situation, or make them wonder what's going on up there, because he had the only cabin up there.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So he had a cabin up there.
In his wanderings, he would hide and watch the transformation or the transfiguration of these ETs, looking like looking like an orb. Or some people would say, hey, we got Bigfoot up there. They would create a hysteria of Bigfoot just to distract from their true identity.
I see.
They transform into one just to keep the legend going.
Keep the legend going. Yeah. Interesting.
That's how they kept their secret of their presence.
I see. So you believe that Eisenhower encountered them at his mountain getaway in California?
They did a test. I've been told they did a test. They wanted to see if a high-ranking political person
it was a test. Yeah.
had experience, how it would be accepted if someone of this caliber came forward and gave the truth. Well, we know what he talked about. The famous video of him discussing the industrial complex.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't come out and say. He didn't come out and say it. Who was it? The only one that came out and mentioned, what if we? Who was the president that did that? It was what's his name? The president that came out and said we came out and found out we were not alone.
Reagan.
How we pulled us together. Who was that?
Reagan. Ronald Reagan.
Reagan. Yeah. He already knew. Reagan already knew.
Yeah.
See? But the ETs were not sure.
Okay.
The ETs were concerned about, we get all our jet fighters and shoot them down.
Right.
We get fighters.
David, your call is breaking up more and more, and we're starting to lose the signal here.
Oh, how's that?
It's a little better. Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah, because I wasn't talking in. Okay. Yeah, they were afraid different nations would respond differently. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
Interesting. Okay, we've got another question here. You mentioned in one of our interviews, someone wanted to know about this incident where you said special guys came on the ship and installed something that you were told was a hunter-killer radar system to take down extraterrestrial vehicles. Is that right? Did he understand or she understand this correctly?
Read the question again.
You mentioned in one of our interviews, I think about interview 4 or 5, you mentioned something about special agents coming on board, special naval personnel in civilian suits installing a special radar system on the Finch. And you referred to it as a hunter-killer radar designed to track unidentified craft or take them down. Is that what you said?
Yeah, they wanted to take one down to back engineer it.
Okay.
That was the purpose. And they knew that our EMF or our radar system had different things. In a way, if they increase the frequencies of certain radar in a crosshair, they might be able to knock it out of the air.
Were you told this by someone that knew for certain that's what it was?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because see, that this area that this was occurring, it hadn't been the first location that this had been taking place. Because whatever the ETs were doing, they would relocate themselves. And when they start to feel that there was a contingency of human ships or vessels trying to interfere with their operations, they would relocate. And the one I saw was relocated from somewhere else.
I see. I get it.
Yeah.
They were moving this radar system around because the craft would move away when it was turned on from one area in the ocean to others?
Yeah, when our radar would interfere with whatever their propulsion system or their communication system, they'd move. I mean, in a flash of you blink an eye and they're gone.
Wow.
And then they would report it somewhere else on the Earth, on the globe. So we had an international agreement that certain ships would be located in different parts of the different oceans to track them and try to collect data to put something together to figure out what the heck it was.
Got it. That's very interesting. And this, what did they refer to it as again? What kind of radar?
EMF.
So it was a very powerful tuned radar to interfere with these vehicles, these area.
Yeah, I mean, they had here with the same systems, and trying to get a collection of data that they could send to a central location and put everything together to come up with some answers. Because it's all fragmented.
Got it.
This thing would move around, so it wouldn't collect, sensitive data in one place. It would move around.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's fascinating. Okay, we've got one last question here. This person wanted to know about your so-called Smokey the Bear incidents. You mentioned something about these. You mentioned one incident, which was fascinating, where you were apparently rescued on the highway from a dangerous situation by MIBs. And as you pulled away, the truck wheels are spinning in the air of the aggressor's truck. And you miraculously just seemed to end up right at your house where you needed to be. You also mentioned some Smokey the Bear incidents where you had gotten out on the highway and could have been in a dangerous situation. And just then, is this correct? Apparently,
yeah, that's correct. Twice my ET guardian appeared as Smokey the Bear in a Ranger vehicle.
State police we're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. State police.
And rescued you from danger. What did they say to you? They said there's no picking up strangers on the highway, Dave.
Yeah. Well, the first time was when I was at a disco club. In those days you had platform shoes and bell-bottom pants.
Yeah.
And there was a young lady that invited me after the dance to meet her outside, and I had my van at the time. It was a foggy night. It was foggy, with the headlights on in front of me. They were shining on my van because I had my van headlights off. And she appeared in the fog in front of the vehicle that she came in. And as I got out of my vehicle to approach her, that's when Smokey Bear came out. He came out and interrupted my conversation with this young lady. And apparently, you know, he said that there's no what did he say? I think he said something about God, I can't remember. My mind just went blank. Do you remember what I said?
I think what you said, it was something like, there's no meeting strangers on the highway or something to that effect.
Yeah, something to the...
No, but it was the way he said it was weird. There's no we don't allow picking up strangers on the highway. But the way he just came out of nowhere, just as you stepped out of your van.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's twice that had happened.
You said there was another incident on the East Coast too, where you had stepped out of your vehicle.
In Pennsylvania, where I picked up the strangers, and then he appeared right behind me and stopped me and ordered the couple, the young couple, I forget how many, 2 or 3 of them, out of the van. And he says, "There's no picking up the hitchhikers." This was in Pennsylvania.
And you said it was the same policeman from California.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Okay. I think we get the idea. These are your watchers, your protectors, right? Showing up just as you're about to get in some trouble from picking up strangers.
Yeah, I honestly believe that, and whether Jesus sends the ETs or he sends angels or what he says, he saved my ass many a times. I swear to God, man. He has saved my ass so many times.
Yeah, and I would encourage our listeners, viewers, to go to the previous episodes where you've elaborated on many of these situations. And we've talked about this before on the different shows that we've done, the recordings, and people can listen to them.
Yeah. And the most astounding one was that pickup. The guy was hitchhiking, and he had a gun in the front seat and told me to get in, and I didn't want to. And then that Lincoln pulls up behind him, tells me to get in the back seat. I get in the back seat, the door opened by itself. And the 2 people never turned around. They had these little funny hats, like Men in Black. And the door closed by itself. The window rolled down. As they pulled out behind this vehicle, the pickup truck, it rose. It got elevated. And the guy was spinning his wheels, blowing smoke. He was above the guardrail as we turned onto the main highway. And his wheels were just spinning, and he was cussing, It was so funny. And then I fell asleep and ended up with the door open, and they dropped me off right where I lived.
And you were saying, how did they know where you lived? A car. Yeah. How did they know where I lived? And
scratching my head.
Did they say anything as you got out? Did they say, "Have a good night, sir," or anything, or just the door opens? That's it.
The door just opened.
And you got out, and that was it. And they drove away.
And that was it. Yeah, and they drove away. I never saw the front of their face. Yeah.
The classic Men in Black story, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's always Men in Black. I had one incident. I don't know if I told you.
You did. The Men in White. The Men in White. Yeah.
Well, no. You see, I lived near the Mint in San Francisco, I guess, where they made money, and not far from there, I'd have to walk a block and then get a bus, go down to the system. In those days, they had a key system, electric car that would take you to Buena Island, which is Treasure Island, where my ship was tied up at the time. And so that was my purpose, was to my apartment and get one of these electric buses that take me down to, to catch the system at the bridge. Well, one morning, got out. I left my apartment and said goodbye to my wife. I was searching for my ID card. I didn't have my wallet on me. And I thought, oh shit, I gotta go back and get it. I won't be able to get on the base without my military ID card. And as I turned around to go back, this convertible with the top down pulled up, and it was a friend of mine that I knew, and I think I've mentioned his name before, Benny Wines. If I haven't, there's a story behind this guy. Anyway, he says, hop in. I said, I got to go back to get my wallet. He said, don't bother. Here it is. And he turned around because he was in the front seat and handed me my wallet. And I'm thinking, how in the hell did he get my wallet when I left it in the apartment?
Yeah.
So the guy that he was in, his convertible, his name was Dave. They were like buddies. They hung out together all the time. They took me down to the key system, and that's where I got my electric bus to Treasure Island where the ship was towed up. And this guy would show up at strange times and places. Mm. But the story with him was, you see, I've always had a patron saint. And I think I've mentioned it before, St. Mary. She's his mother. She's my patron saint. I carry her picture with me, and I go to sleep with her picture on the TV tube. I mean, she's protected me so many ways. And this one particular time, or every time I mentioned her name, Ben would go into catatonic fit like he had epilepsy. What do you call it? Epilepsy. Yeah. He couldn't hear the name, Mary, St. Mary. And it just drive him crazy. Yeah. Wow. That was a weird thing about him. It could be outside, it could be inside, Yeah. And I just mentioned her name, boy, it's just like, oh, weird out.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Dave. Well, listen.
Yeah.
I think we'll continue another time.
Okay.
We wish you the best and hope for your full recovery.
Well, thank you. Thank everybody out there for their prayers and everything. This was a close one.
Yeah.
A very close one. And it left me with the focus on what I need to finish before the good Lord takes me.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, all of you out there that had questions. And I'll be available for Dr. Simeon when he wants to have another interview.
Okay, Dave.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
All right.
Okay, take care. Yep, bye.